We're back. Hi, everyone. Hello, friends. Good to see you all again.
Good to see
Miss you all so much.
I know. It's only been like how many days?
Hours for me, for
Too
James
many.
and myself.
way too many.
And Kyle is still in Austin, which is amazing. We've all come back home, and Kyle is extending his South by, so we want to hear all about that later. Reunion, so quickly. I'm so glad we're back here together again. We've got a lot to go through today. Gosh, we really encountered a lot at South by Southwest. So I want to recount each of the events that we've got. We'll do some quick introductions so everybody knows who we are, why we did it. We'll go through each of the events, and then hopefully we'll have questions, comments. We'll respond to those in real time as best as we can. And then we'd like to end with each of our individual takeaways from our experience there, and hopefully land with some, what do we hope to see with it? So our calls to action, not just for ourselves, but hopefully for all of you out there too. So let's go around the room. Carrie, Dementia Darling, tell us a little bit, tell us who you are, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Well, is it morning for everyone still? No, just for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. But good morning. And I am Carrie Alberts, aka Dementia Darling. And I am a cheerleader for dementia caregivers, family, professional, all of us in the care circle. We need to speak up about these things. So it was an honor to be here with some of my besties and hit the road and try something new. So I'm really excited to be here this morning.
Awesome. Kyle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Rand. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of a company called Rendeavor. Rendeavor does virtual reality for senior living, hospice, and healthcare, primarily focused on overcoming social health. And so a big part of our overall brand and mission is making sure that we take community and we bring it outside. And so I think this was a really fun opportunity to bring community together and showcase how this community and our industry can exist in spaces outside of our industry. It's super fun, excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kyle. Patti?
Hi, I'm Patti LaFleur, and I am the programs lead at Lorenzo's House, which supports families affected by younger onset dementia. I am also a daughter of younger onset dementia, so I understand that journey so deeply. And I'm just so excited to be here to really recap, us taking what we do and really raising awareness in a kind of a unique way. And so I'm excited to be with the four of you and to be with everyone that's tuned in. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Nicole?
Yeah, Nicole will. I love to amplify the voices in this care space. So older adults, senior living, caregivers, and I do that through my work with Will Gather, the Will Gather podcast, Navigating the World with Your Aging Loved One. And it has been really fun to see it come to life. And I also do that through my work with Think Tank and being able to celebrate all of the amazing people that have a story of care. And how do we elevate that? How do we bring resource to people? How do we bring information? How do we have people be seen and heard and understood? And I do that with the platforms that I've created. So
awesome. And I'm James Lee. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bella Grows. We're a dementia education and care organization in San Antonio, and started the Think Tank and work with Nicole to create those events for our peers. All right, here are the five of us. The Care Sanctuary, actually, that's not our group name. Did we officially land on Fab Five? I know that's kind of going around our tech circles.
I think it's fitting. I really do.
It is fitting. I love spending the time together, guys. And before we get into all of the agenda, I have to say thank you to Kyle and to Rendeavor, his team at Rendeavor. We had an idea to do something like this, and it definitely, no shot it would have happened without Rendeavor. And really coming from Kyle, he's one to kind of shy away from acknowledgement in this way, but it is well deserved because of the amazing experiences that we had throughout the weekend, and surely all the stuff that's going to come from it. It takes organizations that are just invested in goodwill, like Kyle and Rendeavor, to do things like this. That's not just hey, let's do it for this specific ROI and this return and this tangible outcome, although we certainly hope that for all of us who were involved. But it really showed me this past weekend, sometimes we just have to literally put our money where our mouth is, go gather with really great people, and just go for it. So thank you, Kyle and Rendeavor, for making this possible for all of us. Nicole or Kyle, do you want to share a little bit about what was the intention? There were a lot of conversations and ideas about why we wanted to do it. It came together through a lot of what ifs. But what are your kind of memories of why we did this in the first place and what we intended out of it? Kyle, do you want to maybe get started?
Yeah, I can start a little bit. So we had the pleasure of speaking last year at South by as well. And in general, the intersection that we sit at with Rendeavor, right? We're doing cutting edge tech. So there's a lot of spaces where cutting edge tech exists. We're working with these populations, and there's a lot of spaces where they exist. And then we have obviously the business side. So we get to exist in like this interesting intersection. And what that means for me on a positive note is that I get to go into spaces that aren't necessarily senior living specific or aren't necessarily healthcare specific on a pretty frequent basis. So I remember right before I came to Think Tank in December, I was in Rotterdam in the Netherlands for an immersive tech week. And we were on stage with Skip, who you all got the chance to meet. And when I started my pitch, or when I started the presentation on our clinical trial results, I asked the audience, which again, everybody's there for technology. I asked the audience, who here has been impacted by dementia? And it was somewhere between a third and 50% of people in the audience raised their hands. And this had nothing to do with senior living and nothing to do with the evening services industry. And I think we've all had those experiences. And it came up a couple times during this weekend, right? Like what we talked about, who we care for. Even somebody that I went to a movie premiere with last night, her grandmother has Lewy body dementia, and she's navigating that right now. And I think it's really important that we have the opportunity to take this space and go. So we spoke last year at South by Southwest. One of my funny, Nicole, I want to pass it over to you, but one of the funny parts about this all came together was when we got selected for our panel this year, Nicole was actually the first person to post about it on LinkedIn. Like Nicole was like, Kyle's going to be at South by, he has a panel. And I think this created this really natural, organic opportunity where we all had a reason to take our brands, take our missions, take our personalities into a different space than we normally exist in. And I think that was the impetus of it all. And then we got to meet up at Think Tank, and Nicole, I think you could probably take it from there.
Yeah. Well, first, celebrating with you, Kyle. And for me, the extension of the relationships that I've made and the different guests that I've had, I really view that as that is ongoing. So however I can support and cheerlead for the work that you're doing, right? Just like continue the amplification is really fun for me. And when we saw each other at Think Tank, and Kyle, you and I also keep in touch and get to, encourage each other in different things, and the opportunity to continue spending more time together, having the collaboration. We've had really good conversation on what you're doing and expanding with Rendeavor more in the family caregiver space, and hearing some of the initiatives that are happening with that and the research. And so it just was, it just snowballed, and we just got excited, and we're like, what if we, just all came together in that. And I love that you brought up how you sit in this interesting intersection, because when we look at all of that's happening and the different conferences and topics of conversation, we had a conversation with Ellen Goodwin with Artifacts, and she was just at a genealogy conference, and she came to us the other day and said, oh my word, you guys, like this is another place and a space to have conversations like you're doing at Southwest. I think she asked that same question. How many of you are affected by brain change? And she was like, what, like almost like over half the room, like so many people. And so it's just that constant reminder of it, just how important it is to make these conversations happen in places that we might not have normally thought of at first. And now we're like, where can we go?
This is such a fun experience to take a what if and then see what happens when everybody says, yes, let's go for it. Let's jump into it. I want to talk about all of the stuff that we got into. So street talks, we did 2 care sanctuary events at the house. We had the official South by panel that Kyle was on. We had the film screening of Lorenzo's house and the official South by Southwest roundtable that came right at the end. So let's start with Street Talks. And so Carrie and Patti, you guys really took the lead on this. Thank God, because I don't know that I would have done as good of a job. I think.
Do we want to say that?
No. We were all like, okay, let's. We've got 2 team captains here. If somebody wants to start off with, what was the intention? What was your hope of doing the Street Talks? Tell me some of the insights. We had a lot of interesting conversations about the nature of these conversations. Let me kick it over to you. What did you think about Street Talks?
Well, if it's okay, Patti, I'll start. But first off, you would think, I'm an influencer. I would be natural on the street talking to people. No, it's nerve-wracking. And Patti is a natural. First off, Patti is fearless. And I just thank you, Patti, so much for truly helping me dive in and feel more comfortable, even though I still have so much to work on there. And I'm excited to keep trying and getting more comfortable, because we know how important these conversations are. And that's why we did it. Because as you just said, everywhere we go, people are touched by this. And so why not? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we talking about these things everywhere we go, any opportunity? And I feel like all of us already do that in our daily lives. So this was just taking it a step further and outside our comfort zones a little bit. But it was just so important for us to really get in with the crowd and where everyone was, where all the action was. And then in between all this excitement, people are touched by caregiving, people are touched by dementia, and they're all able to connect with these conversations in some way or another. Even if, at first we started off and we're like, tell us, something, what reminds you of a family caregiver? And some people were like, what does that mean? And we had to kind of go deeper into that. But then they were like, oh my gosh, yes, my aunt, she makes sure my grandma has a life, she does everything for her. And so it was just so interesting to talk to all different kinds of people, and where they really weren't expecting this conversation. I think, talking to some people about aging was uncomfortable and totally valid. And it just kind of made us realize how we, are wording things, how we might feel more comfortable than others because of the work we do. And I know, obviously, in my daily life, I realize all the time, wow, I know a lot. And I know way too much sometimes about these things, and realize that it's not being talked about outside our bubbles. So I was really excited to do this. And if anyone knows Billy Eichner, and he does this really funny Billy on the street, and I was trying to channel that, but still, again, I had I was nervous. I was worried I was going to upset people. So Patti was so great about being really positive, but also able to really get an emotional response as well. And then tie in Lorenzo's house, and then ended on such a beautiful note of giving a gift of a bracelet and information that we all need to know about. So that was just a little from me. But Patti, please let us know what you felt, because you are a pro, first off.
Okay. Well, you are far too kind. I think that we all know that the intention was to spark conversation. I think one of the biggest learning pieces is that how intimidating, even for all of us who are clearly comfortable being on camera, we're on camera right now with streaming live, how uncomfortable it can be to have some of these conversations about topics that we don't talk about in the world when there's a camera in your face, right? We're comfortable. Carrie, you're very comfortable. You are Dementia Darling on Instagram and on social media platforms. But then to have these conversations with people that are being recorded, it really adds another layer of kind of some intimidation. And we often talk so much about how we sit side by side with people when we're having these deep, meaningful conversations. And when we have conversations like that, where we're putting a microphone in someone's face, or we're recording something, it can sometimes take away that comfort and that safety. And so I think that was something that was a big learning for me personally. The other piece is that one of the most powerful conversations happened in that store where James, you bought your shirt and Carrie should have bought her hat, was that we had started to have this conversation, and the girl, although not touched by dementia, was touched by caregiving. And so just how we were able to, by asking a question and sharing that, we were able to meet that person where they are. So it has me thinking that if we do this again, the importance of almost going up to someone and starting a conversation without the camera, without the microphone, and then building on to that piece to really allow that space, right? We want the spontaneity, we want the fun. And some people, like our dear tarot card reader, Lindsay, she's like, heck yes, I'm doing tarot card reading on the street. I'll tell you guys anything. But it's not the case for everyone. So how do we start to have those conversations from a safe place and then take the next step to maybe open it up in a more public way?
Well, and Patti, you did such a great job with that when we were all standing together, right, while you were approaching and we were talking to people. You did ask the question. You kind of started with the conversation, and then you said, do you mind if we film this, right? And having the consent of, can we capture the story? And so that, and I think that made itself aware, as the day went on, but then that was just status quo. Like, let's ask permission. And if you're comfortable, and most people were, but some people weren't. And so that was just, a good acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting lens to think, tying in the business parts of what we do. We all five of us are responsible for businesses where we have to push forward, our initiatives, and we have to accomplish things from a professional lens. So I think the way that this becomes relevant to everybody watching this is, how do you create authentic moments of sharing stories, capturing stories, do it transparently? Because I think as a profession, as an industry, we tend to give very glossy stuff, right? Even I think throughout the Care Sanctuary and conversations, people challenged us with like our words of joy and things that we take for granted are things that we've interpreted well and understand. But anyway, coming back to this topic of how do we tell stories more authentically without it feeling exploitative? I think we specifically even talked about that. Like, we can't exploit these opportunities and these conversations for, a content reason. We gotta honor that. And yet we also still have to advance as an industry to provide more authentic stories and conversations. Did any of y'all have some insights or thoughts related to that about the crossroads of content authenticity and storytelling?
Well, from witnessing the conversation, I think for me, having even being a bystander to watching each of you talk with people living with dementia, with family caregivers, you are all so heartfelt and loving and create space and compassionate and kind. And so from where I sat, that only translates as authentic to me, right? Being able to see that because I know the behind the scenes of that. And then, then the translation of that is then how do we share that, right? Being respectful of the people that we're sharing that with. So I think first it comes from an internal place of what is my motivation for sharing, right? Like asking yourself that question. And for each of us, it is really, we want to help educate and make people feel less alone and know that we're there with them, and to have these conversations happen in more of these mainstream settings, that it's affecting each of us. So first, I think, getting clear in your own motivation of that. And when you can answer that question, then I believe the representation of that only has one way to be shown, right?
Yeah. I think it's a really good point, Nicole. I think there's an interesting corollary here as well, where what we're ultimately talking about is like, how do we invite people in? These are tough topics. No matter where you are in your journey, it's tough. It gets harder the further you go. And I think there's a direct corollary to what we think about from the senior living industry, which is like, how do we get people earlier? How do we bring people into the community? How do we invite them in a way that isn't at the point of burden, isn't at the point of acute need? And this is like a much bigger question of how do we invite people in? I think one of my favorite parts of the weekend was, of course, I love this, but we talked about like oxytocin. And one of the things that Carrie and you were talking about is one of the ways that you can like build connections is by not only like asking for vulnerability, but also sharing vulnerability back. And I think that there's an interesting opportunity to kind of bring that in. And I think that's what Patti, you do. So I think everyone on this call actually does really well, but Patti, you do it so well and you have so much experience with this.
I think that's a great segue into the care sanctuary. So we went from, it was such a contrast, guys, like literally like, oh my God, are people going to talk to us? Where do we even go? And like, where do we go, physically go to even attempt this? And then it was freezing. That threw a wrench into that day. So Texas, we went from this big uncomfortable, like, let's find people we can talk to on the street, whoever kind of comes by, to a much more intimate, much more curated experience of the care sanctuary. So I'm curious and open-ended to hear for anybody who has reflection on this. First of all, what was the care sanctuary, and then what stood out to you in your experience of it?
I mean, I'll go. The care sanctuary was a space that we invited people in to have this intimate gathering experience where, and, you know, kind of intentionally, unintentionally, it ended up as almost a one-on-one experience with each of us in different ways. For me, one of the biggest things that sat with me is that I had this opportunity to invite families from Lorenzo's house into this safe, beautiful space, and knowing that they were going to be caught across any conversation they had by one of you also allowed me personally as my role to feel comfortable in inviting them in. And the beauty of the space was that they were caught by someone, no matter who they were talking to, that was going to hold space and listen authentically and share deeply and meet them where they were. And I think personally, we had different families that I connected with the most, and they were at different parts of their journey. They were at different experiences. They had different perspectives on their journey, but the power of just being able to be met with a listening ear and someone who understood pieces of their journey, not their journey fully, right? You can't understand someone else's journey fully, but to be met with pieces and understanding was something that I carried with. And then my big takeaway, which I think I talked a little bit when we were on the call on Monday, and it just keeps sitting with me in my work, is just the language that we use when we think about how we describe our experience. So I am 3 years past my journey of caring for my mom. So when I can reflect back on, I can think about those moments of light and connection a lot easier than probably I did in the day-to-day. So really the perspective of what it looks like to be a caregiver day in and day out with someone with a complex brain condition can have moments of joy and connection, but it can also feel a lot heavier and have a lot more sadness. And so how do we intentionally meet people where they are when they're in these really vulnerable moments personally? So that was my big takeaway, is the language that I use matters, and to never just really oversimplify. I talk a lot about the love I shared with my mom. I mean, I have her tattoo on my arm. I have these pieces, but it was also hard, and there was grief and heartbreak. And so how can I just keep that in mind as I am the programs lead at Lorenzo's house, as I am a citizen in the world that is meeting other people on this journey?
I think about in the experiences you guys are reflecting on right now, of how often we speak within our profession, within our industry, in our gatherings, and how the very, very serious things that we talk about are, it's like we're talking, if we were selling wallpaper, it'd be like, it's a casual conversation because it's like our subject matter expertise, but to families, it's not subject matter, it's my life, right? These are very, very hard conversations to have. And I will tell you that, especially over the last 12 months, I've been having conversations where I'm very cognizant of the language I'm using, because I'm in front of people who are affected by the work that we do, right? Talking to people living with dementia, talking with families who are caregiving right now, people who are like, joy, I don't want to talk to you if you're going to talk to me about joy, right? If you want to talk to me about dumpster fire, right? We had the one person, did she literally have a button with the dumpster fire, right? And it's like, okay, that's what our potential audience is feeling. That's the language they're using.
Mhm.
And if we never get outside of our comfortable language sanctioned, gatherings, we'll never feel this discomfort. And if we never feel this discomfort, then we're not serving people, we're selling to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to encourage anyone in our spaces as well that work in this profession. If you're
Yeah.
also personally going through this, speak up about your
Totally.
experience, because we need to be talking to the family caregivers. And if we have them in our industry
Yes.
already, please feel empowered to speak up. But I just wanted to say
Yes.
my time in the care sanctuary, I've never I'm obviously so grateful for Lorenzo's house, but now I'm like, Lorenzo's house, how did we do life without you before? I mean,
Right.
Lorenzo's house is, and I'm not being dramatic, a gift. It's just the biggest gift, you guys. And we saw it in action. We saw people
Oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
some of the most difficult situations I've ever been told. And I listen to this daily. I hear these stories daily, and to be in person and then to see Patti work in her true purpose with what she has experienced, and then what she learns every day with families as she does walk alongside them. And she just reminded me, she reminded all of us that we do not know. I don't know what these families are going through. And I have to walk alongside them, and I have to step into their world, and I have to invite them to my table in more so than just being on social media. I need to be in community with them. And I want to have the care sanctuary in every city and every small town. We need places that are safe for people to come in and say, I am broken right now. What do I do? Who do I turn to? Is there anyone? Am I allowed to be mad? Because all I see is people finding purpose from this, and I don't.
Totally.
And that's okay.
100%.
And to meet 5 people that said that's okay is
Totally.
like, you guys, this was so impactful, and I will never forget this experience. And I hope we keep making this possible for people, because it was
one of the
so
things.
impactful. Go, yeah.
One of the things that has really stuck with me from some of our conversations while we were on site, because of the conversation, James, you and I had, was how meaningful would it be if at the next senior living conference you went to, every single person the week before went and sat down with one of their families of someone living with dementia? What if that was the homework? And then everybody came in with that, because everybody, hopefully who's listening to this, we're serving these families. And obviously we all talk about bringing them into the conversations, right? How many conferences have I been at where people are saying we need to bring family caregivers on stage? You know what? There was a session that I went to right before we did the roundtable where that's what they did. They had 2 researchers looking at the future of Alzheimer's disease. They had Richard, and they had a family caregiver. And they just did it. We should be doing that at every single one of these events, whether it's Care Sanctuary or whether it's just like raising the expectations that we have with each other.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's such an important practical takeaway, because I think we were all very conscientious of we're not coming here to have a private experience that the 5 of us can have and say that was fun. We all went into it with the intention of how do we synthesize this experience we're having and then share it with other people? Because I think that is rooted in stewardship. That's rooted in, if we have the privileged position to go do things like this, how do we take it and share it and make good with it? I love that idea. It sprung from also something that Carrie was reflecting on, is like, we don't have to change conference formats. We just have to change the things that we do when we gather. So I thought that was really, really great.
Yeah, and we touched on that, in our conversation, that with, not for, right? We're providing initiatives and care and for people. How often are we like really, truly including them? And I think that was so evident in these conversations that we were having, is the caregivers that were like, I had no idea where to go, no idea what to do, found you on social media, learned about this event. I'm here. I want to understand even more. And I think the power of the invitation of like, you're right, being community, like, you're welcome here. And I also, we have language that we use, and it's such a great reminder of not stepping into conversations with an assumption of, for example, like you must find joy at this time in your life or whatever it is. It's like, how are we stepping into conversation to hold space, to ask the question and to see where people are at first? Because we will only be able to know how to support them when we truly understand what they're feeling and what they're thinking and what they need.
Yeah.
Yes.
This experience of, in particular, the care sanctuary, of having family members there where, people talk about like when you're in a state of flow, right? You're just in it. You're not thinking about all the different pieces of it. You're just in it. And then when you're out of it, as professionals in a space where there's so much heartfelt work, right? The things, clearly this resonates with all of us. It resonates with our colleagues in the profession. And this idea of how do you take this and then also do good with your business? How do you move your business forward? Because all 5 of us need our individual professional efforts to succeed. And I really love the inclusion of Lorenzo's house as kind of a focal point, which, by the way, that's why this QR code is here. So if you want to help us raise money for Lorenzo's house, it's a small amount. We're trying to get there to $1,000. If you don't, I'm going to have to make it up. And I don't have enough money to do that. So help us out here. And I love Kyle's inclusion of it. It was like, how did that happen? Kyle's like, let's do it for Lorenzo's house. And it really highlights this point about, I've had this thought recently, guys, about whatever you're looking for in your life, go create it for someone else. If you're looking for compassion, go create it for somebody else. If you're looking for visibility, create visibility for somebody else. And I loved the organic, heartfelt reason for focusing on Lorenzo's house, because it's like we all were impacted by meeting, Patti and Stephanie and Diana at Lorenzo's at the think tank. And then like everybody, all, 47 other people were like, how can we help you? And that's a good time to bring in Lena into this conversation, because like, how awesome was she in connecting us with this? Does anybody want to give her a quick shout out for what Lena did to help us out here?
Patti.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, me, please. Huge shout out to Lena. Lena, not only since meeting her at Think Tank, I will always tease James about this because he told me to continue to walk and go past the table. But I sat with Lena the first night at Think Tank, and we just really bonded as caregiver daughters who are walking this journey and often have to show up for others in our profession, but we are also caregiver daughters first. And so we understand that so deeply. And since Think Tank, she has already provided Lorenzo's house beautiful opportunities to speak and to share, but she really showed up for this space so beautifully for this think tank or for this care sanctuary and for the screening on Monday.
Yeah.
We had this idea that there would be a screening on Monday. We were trying to float around some ideas. We made the decision to reach out to Lena, and she made it happen. Not only did she bring people in, not only did she introduce us to the most beautiful space filled with the most beautiful people. Shout out to Age of Central Texas. That was incredible. Blair and her team. Thank you. Like now we have a whole nother group of just incredible, wonderful partners between Lena's Mirror Care Consulting and Age of Central Texas and Blair. I mean, it was just such a gift, but she really was like, we're going to make this happen. I was on a Zoom call with her. She called Blair immediately while we were on the Zoom call. Blair was on the car. She pulled over, she chatted, and we had planned this Monday event in 24 minutes. And it was just such a gift to share Lorenzo's house and then to really elevate everyone's voices in that way. And so huge shout out to Lena for seeing Lorenzo's house and all of us.
Yeah. We'll tag Linda in the comments afterwards so that you guys can connect with her. The care sanctuary was so special, and I know all of us have in our hearts that we want to do something else with it beyond here. So I'm really interested to see what these 5 hearts and brains come up with. Let's shift gears here a little bit to talk about official South by Southwest stuff. So I thought we were gonna, pack Kyle a lunch, send him on his way, and hear about it afterwards. But he hooked us up. We got to go in. We were in the front row. And then Kyle was like, "Can you record it for me?" I was like, "Okay." You gave me a job along with my ticket. I loved it so much. I felt so cool, like walking into South by, the three of you had badges. I had to carry a tripod with no camera on it. I had a camera, and I had to look official with just an empty tripod. But we got there, and we got to participate in South by. Kyle, this is not your first South by experience. Open-ended question to help you get started in this discussion. Why did you choose to participate in South by Southwest when you're, maybe your big target audience from a business perspective, might be more in like senior living conferences and things like that. So what was your motivation in wanting to participate, and what value do you get out of being at South by Southwest officially?
It's a really good question. And what's lovely about that question, I feel like we've already answered it in the last 30 minutes, right? Like, I think we all fundamentally understand why it's important that we look outside of our industry. We all talk about looking outside of our industry. For us, that's always been a part of our goal, right? Like, our entire approach with PR, our approach with marketing isn't about showing VR headsets, right? Like, we almost went the full weekend, don't hate me team. We almost went the full weekend without actually having VR included at all. That's not like our fundamental approach. If we want to change the way that we think about building community, if we want to change the way that we think about integrating social health and mental health as a fundamental component of what we consider longevity, then we need to be doing things that are 3 steps back, as well as doing things that are nitty gritty on the ground. And so that's been fundamental to how we built this company over the past almost 10 years. As far as, I think other like kind of key reflections, one of the things that we've seen over the years, Carrie, is like, no matter how much work we do to show the value that VR as a technology, Endeavor side, VR as a technology can do for people in various needs, at dealing with various components of their care journey, whether or not that's where we started, which was focusing on dementia care, or where we've really expanded what that panel was about, which was focused on patient care. We've done a ton with cancer populations, done a ton with infusion clinics. You guys all heard the stories that Nikki Caputo from UC Health, who was one of the most incredible people in this industry, shared. You saw the video of Mary experiencing music as medicine through like a interdisciplinary and collaborative partnership to bring her on stage with the Red Rocks. Like, there is so much that has been proven, and there are so many people who still think that VR is a game, or who think that VR is like this flashy thing that Apple's charging $3,500 for, where in the reality, it's like a fundamental opportunity to change how we think of the non-pharmacological side of care. And so there's an unlimited number of places where I want to share that message, and being able to share it at South by was a great one.
Yeah, it was really powerful to hear the data, right when Nicole was talking about, like 70% of people went through one of the studies, and Kyle, you can probably speak more in detail about that, no longer qualified for that high impact pain, that they reduced the severe narcotics and medications they were on by such a percentage by experiencing VR prior to their surgery or their procedure. And just, when you have the data, like, we know how powerful it is. We saw Mary's story, but then to really see how like applicable and how powerful that it was, it's really cool.
The story.
Specific, sorry, can I just share really quickly the specific stat? And I want to share one added bit there. So this was a study that I didn't even know was happening. And this, I think we could do a whole panel on this, but what Rendever and UC Health has been doing together is like fundamental collaborative partnership, right? They're doing so much. Our hope is to have this one tool in their tool belt of how to provide care. And because of the approach that Nikki has taken with the team, this study just came up, and I literally heard about it an hour before or a day before we went on stage. And the just quick stat was that people who utilized VR before going into surgery were able to have a 70% decrease in fentanyl and a 30%, rough numbers, 30% decrease in opioid use. And you want to talk about numbers, you want to talk about like addiction, you want to talk about like, what does it mean to do non-pharmacological care? It's huge.
Wow. Thank you.
Nikki, she made such an impression on the whole audience, and to have her at the house the day before, just to have breakfast and talk and hear some of that. For me, and I know Carrie and I had a lot of specific conversations around this, but we've both kind of slept on VR. And I'm admittedly I'm one of those people that's like, oh, because the times I've tried VR, they tend to show me like the game, the balloon popping, and but what was so deeply impactful about this for me personally was hearing the stories and grounding it to like, oh, like she told this story about a gentleman who, towards the end of his life, got to revisit like the being in the hunting blind and being back home, and there was no physical way to get him there, and to be able to, for a care provider, for a care partner to know this would be a really great way, because the technology is just technology, right? It's a tool in a tool belt or box, but it allows for the care provider who knows their person so deeply that, okay, I can creatively use this thing that I've got now to do this thing for him, and to be able to transport him in his reality to a place that provided so much comfort. And then she said he passed away not too long after that experience, and how beautiful that he got to go home before he went home. I'm just like, oh, okay, tears all the way throughout this weekend. And Kyle said it too, like, how many conferences do you go to where you have chills? Like every hour, you're just like, here's a new, I'm crying, I get chills. Story, so powerful. Even just us recalling a story of a story of a story,
Kyle, can you just share some of what you learned on your latest research about dementia utilizing Rendeavor?
Yeah, 100%. We're getting ready. I was just on a meeting before this. We're getting ready for a white paper, which will go deep into all of this. But we just finished a 3-year-long clinical trial on use of VR for very specifically family engagement. And so we paired people with anywhere from MCI through moderate dementia. Can't quote the exact MMSE, but I think it was something like 14 to 27, with a family member who is not their primary caregiver. So a family member who doesn't live within like a 50-mile radius. On average, in the almost 200 families we enrolled, on average, that distance was 1,069 miles. So we're really talking about people who don't get to spend any time together, dealing with like the guilt and the burden of what that feels like, and other feelings, which again, we can have a whole panel on, coming together and spending time together. And there were a lot of really interesting outcomes. For us, it was a study on social health. It was a study on mental health. It was a study on human connection. Most of our deployments with Rendeavor are more like groups that are all physically co-located. But to be able to spend time with a family member who you can't spend time with, wildly cool, first of all. And then we wanted to be like, what's the impact? I think my favorite of all the outcomes is that, and this is the one that I think should hopefully fundamentally change how people think about VR. What we found was that the higher the level of cognitive decline, the greater the impact on mental health, the greater the impact on reducing depression. There's a lot of data that we could share, but to me, that's everything, because we're all, in that meeting that I just had, we were looking at, some people think that maybe social isolation really isn't a problem. Some people over-index on their super active residents, right? Every community has 5 residents who they're everywhere. They're, the spokespeople. And then there are some residents that are so like on the tail end of like high acuity care, nothing but one-on-ones. What do we do with the 40% that's in the middle? And do we just like keep asking them to come to bingo? Or do we utilize their family? Do we utilize their stories, their legacy, as a way to integrate them into community? And that's what this whole body of research has been about. So I'm really excited to share more over the next few months.
Yeah. Seeing you with your friends and your colleagues, Kyle, at South by Southwest, it really, for me, was a treat to see one of our own kind of out in, the mainstream, making such an impression. And we're always impressed by one another, but then to be able to see that translate to people who have no vested interest in these relationships other than I'm impacted by the story that you're sharing with me right now, was really wonderful. So thank you for getting us all into your panel and seeing that.
Thank you for coming.
let's move a little bit to the film screening. Patti, we touched on it a little bit here. So our friends at Age of Central Texas, along with Lena Supnet Zapata, they got us connected, and we got to tour afterwards, which was so amazing. So you've done the screen filming many times, I'm sure. So what I want to ask you is, was there anything that felt different about this particular film screening, and why?
We do a ton of film screenings because it's such a beautiful tool for raising friends and raising funds, right? It's such a beautiful awareness tool that really shows Diana's story. It shows her beautiful sons, and it shows Larry Lorenzo in such beautiful ways. I think what was so special about this screening in particular was the fact that we got to be in person, and it got to be in person in a place that I hadn't been before. I had built some deep relationships with all of you, and with some members of the audience that I had known in a variety of different ways, and then other people that I didn't know. But what was so special was the real takeaways that came from this. I think I'm someone that I've been connected with on Instagram for a long time. Megan, many of you connected with her after the film screening as well. But really the impact that it had on her, she did a short Instagram shout out the other day, and it felt like she knew Lorenzo's house so deeply. I was like, okay, you're now our new ambassador. But I think that the ripple effect that has come from Think Tank and has come from the relationship with Lena, but that has already come from this event, it being in person and having that feeling, like you can feel how that movie hits people, and you can feel how the stories that I'm able to kind of share after, like, okay, so that's the film, that was the one dream, and now let's put it into practice and what we're doing and what Avi is experiencing as a 9-year-old and what our friend Angela is experiencing as a 4-year-old, and to be able to share those stories that have come from one family story just feels so deep, and the power of being in person. But I think I already have 3 or 4 film screenings scheduled just from that one event that have now rippled to other communities. And so I think the power, just it reminds me of the power of being in person. As a virtual organization, we don't get a lot of opportunities to be in person. And when you are in person and you are amongst other people, even people that maybe you didn't know before, it can really cause such a ripple effect beyond what you even
I want to highlight something you said that I think is applicable for all of us and for people watching, and that's the it's the impact of having people who know you, love the story. It's just the idea that like the 5 of us coming together, there's the kind of the benefit to my business or any individual efforts for Bella Girls or Think Tank, it's uplifted and amplified because the 4 of you love me, the person, not the business idea, right? We love Patti, the person, not the films, not the film screening or the event that occurred. But when you're infused with that kind of energy, not just the audience that got to see the film, but I think about the energy that we felt for 4 days together. And then I got a little bit of extra time with Carrie because she got to be with us at Bella Groves afterwards. But I definitely believe in the power of energy, and that when there's a difference between networking and it's like, oh yeah, no, I know Kyle, because when people ask, do we know other people in the industry, we're like, oh yeah, we're connected on LinkedIn. Do you need a connection? But now, after this 4 or 5 day experience, I don't know, it transcends, like, I know somebody, and it comes into the territory of I feel bought in to their mission. I feel like a card carrying member of each of your organizations. And did you guys have any feelings like that?
Yes. You got to find your people. That's it. That's for my people.
Weekend for sure. So we're going to continue to give love and support to our friends at Lorenzo's house. Let's end with the last event. We had a South by Southwest roundtable, which was another cool, unexpected experience for me, something that many of you were already planning on. So what was the roundtable? Maybe Kyle, you can take this of what was the format, what was it? And then if somebody else wants to jump in on what did you take away from it? What was the experience like?
I think it's more fair for Carrie to jump in on this. It was
Okay,
amazing.
Carrie,
I would
okay,
love
so-
to talk about it, but Carrie, you knew Richard. Like you
Carrie
made
did
sure
say
we
this.
all
Yes.
made it to
Yes,
that.
yes,
Give me my credit.
Yeah.
I'm kind of cool. No, Richard Liu, who is an incredible he's an reporter with MSNBC, NBC. He's created many documentaries. I met him through HFC, Hilarity for Charity. I met him at a big event through that. And then I saw him again at CES and got to introduce Patti to him. But he is a big leader in this care space, in specifically in Alzheimer's awareness as well. He works with Alzheimer's Association as an advocate, but such an incredible man. And I saw that he was going to be there, and then I was like, we're coming, oh my goodness. And he was like, please come, you have to be a part of this conversation. And when I realized he was partnering with Caring Across Generation, I was even more ecstatic, because I am such a fan of Caring Across Generation and the work that they do. Asian Poo, who is one of the founders, has just been such a hero of mine. So to have some of her team there, 2 of her team are literally, their work is culture change for care in our country. Like, that's their role. So to be at that table with, what I would say, I'm bad at 15, 17.
Yeah, absolutely. 15 or 20, maybe.
I think it was 25.
25. Okay, really.
He counted for us.
I did not count. So like 25 people, and from all different walks of the care economy. I mean, we had a gentleman that is working on with the blood test to be able to diagnose Alzheimer's. And so he's working on that. And then there was Lilly Pharmaceutical. There was one of our friends who we got to meet in person, Mary Osborne, your dementia therapist, who is an OT in the dementia care space. And then also meeting, researchers from UT who are working on specific Lewy body dementia research, which is amazing to hear. So we were all at this table, and it was a moonshot kind of idea that you were able to just throw out there. Like, if you had nothing holding you back, what would be your ultimate care moonshot idea? So it was beautiful to sit there and hear the innovation in that room, and I can see these things happening. I can see these things becoming reality. And it was an honor to be at that table, and then to have more time with Richard and the Caring Across Gen team afterwards, and to just hear about what they're doing. They are having these conversations across the country, and they are fighting on the ground for care. And it's just really inspiring. So it was an honor to just be there and to be able to hear these ideas and to be a part of something that will now go forward and add to another conversation and add to another. And it's that ripple effect again.
It was one of my favorite moments of the entire weekend. And, I got the chance to go to the panel that Richard led right before that, which was called Reimagining the Future of Alzheimer's. And it was, Alzheimer's Association was represented, Eli Lilly was represented, and candidly, a lot of the conversation was about pharma. It was about drugs that are coming out, and we need them. Like, full stop, we need them. But I felt myself feeling like, to truly reimagine the future, we need to make sure that we're thinking about all the different things that the future looks like, right? Because these drugs are still going to take time. There's still going to be side effects. Like, there's probably going to be, there needs to be an interdisciplinary approach. And then we went right from that session, we sat down and we heard from everybody who's thinking from interdisciplinary approaches, who's thinking from culture change. It was so good. It was great to hear you guys all actually lead, right? Like, everybody here had such good voices in that conversation that I think really steered it forward. Yeah, I was like, how did I get inside this room? Carrie got us inside that room, but it was not lost on me. And afterwards, I was reflecting about that, Kyle. Of I just shared a story about a resident that I've known most of my career and has inspired me. I've shared it with people in senior living, but it was really an interesting thing to share that story, knowing that the CEO of Eli Lilly was across the room from me. And thinking about that, that kind of conversation wouldn't have happened at a senior living conference. It just wouldn't have. And so giving people like this, the people who are on the screen, an opportunity to come into our space and affect it and change it and move it. If you are sleeping on
care economy people, like social media influencers and podcast creators. And there are so many people attached to this work that are far beyond senior living, senior housing operators.
Sure.
And for the first 10 or so years of my career, that's all I thought there was. And now I realize, oh my gosh, I've just been swimming in a little pond and there's this huge ocean out there of people. So, Patti, what was your experience like at the roundtable?
I was just going to hop in. So thanks for calling on me. The power, I felt like there was kind of two big takeaways. One was it reiterates what we were talking about is the power of stories, the power of storytelling, right? A lot of the focus for Caring Across Generation is how do we elevate stories of care, and how do those stories of care raise awareness? They start to inform policies. They start to inform bigger decisions. Yeah. And then also this idea of how do you normalize care in the media, right? It doesn't have to be a show about caregiving, but there can be a caregiver in the show. The other perspective that came to me, just given I really had this deep conversation with a member of the Caring Across team who is actually now going to be part of our youth summit. So just huge celebration. But she's so deep and beautiful, but was about how caregiving, I am someone who often just thinks of caregiving as being a caregiver of someone with dementia, or caregiver of an older adult. But there are so many different stories of care. There are so many different journeys. There are so many different ways. And even the perspective of being a parent caring for a daughter or a son or caring for your child, right? And so how do all of those stories need to be elevated across so many different platforms and be thought about and be really recognized for what they're doing? It was just a really good perspective shift for me. I feel like I was all through the whole weekend, there was these moments of personal perspective shifts. And one of them was really the elevation of stories of care that are outside of the stories I hear every day.
Yeah. God, I love that. Our hour has flown by. We're at the top of our hour here. I know. And so I want to give everyone here an opportunity to wrap up here a little bit. And so I'll end with a big question, really, which is, what's your takeaway? And I know, how do you distill this amazing week into one thing? But either what's your takeaway, or what do you hope comes of this? I think would be a really great way to end our time. I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds each to think about it. So I'll go first here. My biggest takeaway was to do work with people like you. There aren't always obvious reasons or connections, meaning like I think our profession, especially in the rush of trying to expand our missions, which all of us are in it for the right reasons, I think a lot of times we think with our heads more of like, what's the logical partnership that I would have with Rendever or Dementia Darling? And instead, something I've learned from the think tank experience and has really translated to the care sanctuary here is do work with people that you admire, and who cares what the actual tangible thing is that you're trying to work on together, just work together, and that's been my biggest takeaway of this whole week. And I'm so impacted by the four of you, and I really cherished our time together beyond the professional stuff we got to do. So I feel like I know each of you a little bit better, and I'm in your corner. Lifer, Fab Five, hashtag. So Patti, you want to go first?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, personally, I agree with you, James, right? The power of being with people that you admire and getting to learn who they are as people and how you can position people to really empower and see how they shine. And so personally, I'm taking away this friendship and love and heart from this weekend. But I think from a professional standpoint, the big piece for me is really, as I named earlier, is really the intentionality of the language that I use when I meet people who are walking this journey. So the intentionality of how I show up as a person in my role professionally, how I show up as a person in my personal relationships, really just the power of perspective, the power of just really leaning in and listening. I got to witness all four of you lean in and listen in really beautiful ways and to show up for people that maybe in spaces that you didn't typically show up and in ways that you do typically show up, and watch you shine and watch you be in that space. So I took just a little bit of how each of you show up, and I'm going to continue to personally show up in different ways and professionally.
I feel like we should all.
I know, that was so beautiful, Patti.
It's
And I
That was so good.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not ready for my answer, Carrie. I want you to go, but I have to tell you that during the week this week, I found myself going like this so many times.
I know. That's all we did, all of us.
Yeah, it's true. Carrie,
It's
Nicole?
so true. Well, I want to just, everything you both have said, obviously, I won't reiterate it because just you hit it on the head there. I'm really grateful, yes, for the intentional time we had together. I think, you know, at least for me, I work alone at home, and it can be really easy to get caught up in a lot and be in your head a lot. And I was able to get out of my head and just be in the moment with people that truly filled my soul in so many ways and really intentionally reminded me why I do the things I do, and reminded me that I'm a student, and that's good. And I'm learning from all of you. I'm learning from the people we met, and I'm learning from, and I'm excited to learn more. And I think that, you know, the care sanctuary needs to go on hardcore. And I hope that everyone gets to experience the care sanctuary, because it is a place where you can take a breath and feel seen. And I just really look forward to seeing where this goes, because it was so special to me, and I know it will go on to be special for a lot of other people too.
Amazing, Carrie.
Yeah, so good. Well, I can share, you know, part of my time that was so powerful was being in community, right? With caregivers, people living with dementia, people, you know, sharing our space with us that have the same heart for care. And it reminded me so much of what we've shared is like that with, not for, you know, like open your heart, open your ears, open your mind, right? Do things differently, be open to change, right? And how we approach this. And just on a personal note with my work, it's like I'm even more energized to share the stories of care, right? To elevate, to amplify, and walking around and meeting with the families, being on the board for Lorenzo's House, supporting their work. I've always known how important it is, right? Like having Patti, having Diana as a guest and Patti, but to see how like vital this organization is and how needed in every interaction that we had makes me just even more like impassioned to make sure that this organization grows and thrives and they can continue to reach people. They are already around the world, but continue to do that and to be a support system, because people need it and they didn't know. And so now they'll know, because we'll be sharing and talking about it. So super grateful for all of you, for the time, from learning from you. It was so cool to look around and see like each of your gifts shine and see who you are and talk with everybody. And it was so cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicole. Kyle, wrap us up.
Okay, I'm going to take my takeaway and merge it into a call to action, because I think they're one and the same. I think to wrap on the theme of finding your people, one of the things that I hear in this industry all the time is people feel like they found their people. And I think the thing that I want to replicate the most from this experience is taking those people, taking these like-minded, like-hearted people, and finding ways to elevate them, finding ways to encourage them outside of their comfort zones, which may be quite wide, and do that knowing, and this is, I think, to go back to one of the key points that Nikki made on the panel, knowing that at the end of the day, we're all here, we all do what we do, we're all in this industry for residents, for patients, for families, for true humans. And if you find your people, you make sure that what you guys do together is on behalf of that. It's on behalf of those humans. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need another happy hour at Frank Sinatra's house. The world needs people coming together and elevating the voices that matter and elevating the families that matter. And that's what we should do.
It's a great call to action. I hope we get to do this again soon, everybody. For those of you watching on LinkedIn, thank you for joining us or rewatching. Connect with all these beautiful people if you're not already. I loved our experience, and it sounds like all of you did as well. So let's get offline and figure out where we're going next. So to everybody else, enjoy your Friday, enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for joining us here. Bye.